In the spring of 1943, some Allied patrols scouting near Tunis got a surprise. Tucked away in an olive grove, they found something that changed their whole view of German tanks. There it was, a Tiger 712, a German heavy tank, sitting pretty much untouched. It was a beast of a machine, its big 88mm gun pointing off into the distance. The armor was in good shape, and the crew was nowhere to be seen. They hadn't even tried to blow it up or mess it up before leaving. It looked like in the mess of the German lines falling apart, they just took off and left behind what was supposed to be their best weapon. For the Allies, finding a Tiger tank in one piece was like hitting the jackpot. They knew they could learn a lot from it, not just about how the Germans built their tanks, but also where they messed up. The Axis forces were already in bad shape in North Africa. In May 1943, tons of German and Italian soldiers gave up in Tunisia. The famous Africa Corps was done. Among the losers were guys from Germany's top-notch 5,001st Heavy Tank Battalion, one of the first to get the powerful Tiger tanks. These Tigers had started showing up in Tunisia at the end of 1942. They already had a big reputation. The Soviets had run into them near Leningrad and said they were like unstoppable monsters that could take out T-34s from miles away. The Tiger's 88mm gun, which came from the scary German anti-aircraft gun, could blast through any Allied tank way before the other tank could even fire back. When American soldiers first heard about these super tanks, some thought it was a load of bull. But then, on February 14, 1943, the Germans counterattacked at Sidi Bouzid, and things got real. The U.S. 1st Armored Division went up against the Tigers for the first time, and it was a disaster. A bunch of their Shermans got wrecked. The Tiger's strong armor and long-range gun quickly became something people feared. Soldiers started talking about having Tiger phobia. Units would stop moving just because someone thought a Tiger might be nearby. But even though the fear was real, the truth was there weren't that many Tigers in North Africa. They were more of a legend than an actual threat. As things moved into spring, the Tiger's problems started to show. Machines broke down, they ran out of parts, and most of all, they didn't have enough gas. This messed up the 5,001st Battalion way more than any Allied guns did. Their own diary, which the British later found, told the story day by day. They had 20 Tigers working in December 1942, then 14 by the end of the month, 11 in January, and only 6 by March. By April, most of them were broken or out of gas. They got orders to pull back, but they didn't have enough gas to move. The guys who were supposed to blow up the tanks couldn't get to all of them. So, in that olive grove near Tunis, Tiger 712 was left behind, untouched, quiet, and waiting. British engineers were the first to check it out, but then the Americans took over. The tank was super heavy, almost 60 tons, so moving it was a big job. They used a bunch of recovery vehicles, bulldozers, and cranes to drag it to Tunis harbor. There, they loaded it onto the SS Samuel P. Bush, a Liberty ship, and sent it across the Atlantic. The trip took almost a month. When it got to Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland in July 1943, the American engineers knew they had something amazing, one of the best captured weapons of the whole war. At Aberdeen, teams from Army Ordnance studied every little thing about it. They measured the armor, tested the gun, and were amazed at how well the Germans had designed it. The Tiger's special wheels and suspension made it really stable off-road. Its engine made a lot of horsepower. On paper, it seemed like the perfect tank. But then the engineers looked at how much gas it used, and they were shocked. The Tiger could hold a lot of fuel, but it could only go a short distance on roads, and even less off-road. That seemed crazy for a tank that was supposed to be a big deal in battles. To be sure, the engineers at Aberdeen did a bunch of tests. For 6 months, they drove Tiger 712 on all kinds of surfaces. The results were unbelievable. On good roads, the Tiger used a ton of gas per mile. Off-road, it was even worse. In fake battles, with all the moving and shooting, it burned up even more gas. That meant a Tiger could barely go anywhere before running out of fuel. For the people in charge of supplies, it was a nightmare. Each Tiger needed a crazy amount of fuel every week just to keep running. A group of 20 Tigers would need way more fuel than a whole American tank battalion with twice as many tanks. So, Germany's strongest tank was also the hardest to keep running. These findings were kept secret and given to the Allied commanders. They showed that the Tiger's real problem wasn't its armor, but its need for fuel. Intelligence officers compared the Aberdeen data with German supply records and saw the pattern everywhere. Heavy tank battalions were stuck in defensive positions, unable to chase after victories, all because they didn't have enough fuel. Even in France and Russia, Tigers didn't go far from their supply depots. Diaries from the top SS units talked about winning battles in the morning, but then having tanks that couldn't move by the afternoon. One entry from Normandy just said, "The best tanks in Europe are sitting still because they need fuel." American tactics changed quickly. Training films from late 1943 taught tank crews that moving fast, not just having big guns, was how to beat Tigers. The film said, "Make them move." Every mile a Tiger drove used up its precious fuel. Sherman crews were told to make the Tigers move around, draw them out, and let them run out of gas. They used air strikes and artillery to destroy supply lines. By the time of the Normandy breakout in 1944, this plan was working. Allied forces moved a long way in a week, while the German heavy battalions couldn't move much at all. All along the roads from France to Belgium, Allied troops found Tigers that had been left behind, engines still good, but fuel tanks empty. The tanks that had once scared everyone were now quiet, defeated by simple math. The best example of this was during Hitler's last big attempt, the Ardennes Offensive in December 1944. German planners gave each tank division just enough fuel to go a certain distance, thinking they would capture Allied fuel dumps along the way. They didn't. By the end of the first week, the offensive had stopped. Tanks, including Tigers, were stuck on the roads in Belgium, empty and useless. The crews tried to steal fuel from wrecked tanks to keep a few vehicles going, but the offensive died where the fuel ran out. It was a failure of supplies disguised as a military defeat. After the war, Allied investigators talked to the engineers who had built the Tiger. They said they had warned about the fuel problem back in 1942, but the military wanted the best armor and firepower, no matter the cost. One of the engineers even said that both designs they were considering had problems with fuel consumption. The technology at the time just couldn't move that much steel without using a lot of fuel. The Tiger was made to win battles, not wars, and wars are won by having enough supplies. By 1945, a final report said it plainly. The Tiger was great for fighting battles, but terrible for planning a war. It was amazing, but not practical. Each tank used a crazy amount of fuel over its lifetime, enough to run a bunch of other tanks. Germany had built an army it couldn't support. The Tiger was a perfect example of how being good at tactics doesn't matter if you don't have enough supplies. For years after, Tiger 712 stayed at Aberdeen, used to teach new American tank officers. They even cut open its hull to show how it worked inside, turning the once feared tank into a classroom exhibit. Later, it was loaned to Germany for repairs and then put on display at Fort Moore, Georgia. Its gun is silent, and its engine is still, but what it taught is still important. It changed how every tank was built after that. The M48 Patton and the M1 Abrams both show that balance: firepower, protection, and, most importantly, moving fast with good logistics. Tiger 712 taught the world that even the strongest weapon is useless if you can't keep it running. A tank that can only go a short distance in battle can't win a war that goes across whole countries. Germany learned that lesson the hard way. America learned it by studying and built its future around it. Now, Tiger 712 is a reminder that in war, it's not just about guns and armor, but also fuel and supplies. Firepower wins fights, but supplies win wars. The Tiger tank could win any battle by itself, but it couldn't get to the next one. And that, its own big weakness, became one of the most important lessons in modern warfare.